1 month doesn't make a trend, but when you start seeing 2-3 months in a row where home prices in Canada have started to drop, that's something you got to pay attention to. Is this just a summer slowdown or a sign of something more significant? Let's find out on this month's Canadian real estate market update here on Bald Prairie Real Estate. We're going to cover 11 major real estate markets in Canada. Let's get into it.
Hey everyone, I know it's late September. This video should have come out weeks ago. I've been absolutely swamped busy this month. Last month I got sick and then was crazy busy, so I didn't even get a monthly market update video out. So yes, I know this is coming late, but I still wanted to get it out. I enjoy making them. I know you guys enjoy knowing what's going on in the Canadian real estate market. If you don't know him, my name is Matthew Pfeifer, real estate agent in Regina, and that's my trusted assistant, 𝗳𝗲𝗏𝗂𝗧. We're gonna be going west coast to east coast here, talking about what's going on in 11 major real estate markets in Canada, giving you the sales numbers, and I like comparing them versus the 5-year average because it's gonna give you a much better idea of how this year fits with what's normally happening. Because if you compare versus just last year, the year-over-year numbers, nothing makes sense because the last couple of years the Canadian real estate market have been all over the place, up and down, sideways. So we're not going to do that. We're also going to give you local agent insight because you got to know what do these numbers mean and what are the trends to look out for in these various different real estate markets. But as always, let's start off with another one of my terrible bad dad jokes. What do you call a Frenchman being mauled by a lion? Claude. If you have a terrible joke that I can use in the future, put it in the comments below. Let's get into this month's update.
There were 544 homes sold last month in Victoria, which is down 23% from that 5-year average of 700. And it's actually continued to increase. The last couple of months, the gap between that 5-year average in sales has gotten larger. There was also almost 1,100 homes newly listed for sale in Victoria in the month. That's up 3% from the 5-year average. Usually it's about 1,050 in the month. And there's almost 2,500 homes currently for sale in Victoria. That's up 11% from their 5-year average. Usually about 2,250 are for sale this time of year. So months of inventory is 4.6. It continues to edge while it's still in the middle of a balanced market. It continues to edge closer to a buyer's market. When it comes to home prices in Victoria, the Canadian Real Estate Association's composite benchmark price, $891,000, down 2% year over year, down 9% from the peak we saw last spring of $975,000 in Victoria. If you just looked at these numbers in a vacuum, quickly read the press release where the Victoria real estate market numbers are down, and then they said in the press release, well, it's the seasonal slowdown. That's kind of normal this time of year. Well, that's why I go and do these deeper dives, go through the numbers, keep all the historical data that I've got, and talk to local real estate agents because, yeah, they're seeing a summer slowdown in Victoria, but as I talked about in the sales numbers, the gap between the 5-year average has continued to get larger, and that to me doesn't scream normal seasonal slowdown. There's more at play here. We're obviously seeing a bigger slowdown in the Victoria real estate market than can be attributed to just seasonal factors. A couple interesting things though, the back half of August, sales really started to pick up, and it sounds like that has continued on through into September. We're gonna have to wait until we get all the September numbers in to see how much more picked up and whether this is just a little blip on the radar or not. Another little interesting little note I pulled out of the information package was that over a decade ago, the number of homes for sale in Victoria was typically over 5,000 this time of year. And we have 2,500 right now. So yes, inventory has increased quite a bit, but it's a long ways off what it was even just a decade ago. In Vancouver, almost 2,300 homes sold in a month. That is down 10% from their 5-year average. Usually about 2,500 homes are sold in the month, and it's 2 months in a row now that that gap versus the 5-year average has increased. But the just about 4,000 homes newly listed for sale in Vancouver is actually down 5% from the 5-year average. Usually they have about 4,200 homes listed for sale in the month, and again, 2 months in a row that gap versus the 5-year average has increased. When it comes to homes for sale right now in Vancouver, there's about 10,100. That is down 11% from the 5-year average. Usually about 11,700 homes are up for sale this time of year. And normally this is when we see inventory increase in Vancouver, not decrease. And when it comes to home prices in Vancouver, the Canadian Real Estate Association's composite benchmark price that combines all property types into one number, $1.2 million. That is up 5% year over year. It's down 4% from the peak we saw of 1.26 million in April of last year. 8% is how much prices have gone up since January this year though. But this was the first time, month over month,
that home prices decreased in Vancouver this year. Generally this time of year in Vancouver, and this holds true in a lot of Canadian cities, we see the end of the summer slow down. Really, things don't get to pick back up until after the Labor Day weekend. So we'll have to wait until next month's stats are in to see if that holds true or not. But as I talked about, new listings, sales, inventory, that gap versus the 5-year average in all three categories has been widening. So to me, that's not just normal seasonal trends. There's more at play here. The other thing that's really interesting is that when it comes to home prices, the last decade, from July to August, about 50% of the time, home prices have dropped. And the other 50%, typically, they've stayed about flat. So we're gonna have to wait and see, because really September and October is gonna be the true test as to what happens and what's going on in the Vancouver real estate market. If we see an uptick in activities, we see home prices potentially bump. I don't think we're gonna see it, but if we did, that would be what we'd expect to see at this time of year. So check back next month to see if that starts or not. The Calgary real estate market, and this is somewhat true across the prairies, but more so for Calgary, continues to defy real estate logic, and we're seeing a very busy and active month. There's a lot of good reasons as to why. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the 2,730 homes sold in the month, that is up 53% versus the 5-year average. And generally, this is a month that we should have seen sales drop, not increase from the previous month. While the 3,100 homes newly listed for sale in Calgary, that is up 12% over the 5-year average. Usually about 2,800 homes are listed for sale in the month. And there's less than 3,300 homes currently for sale in Calgary, down a staggering 49% right now versus their 5-year average. Usually about 6,400 homes are for sale this time of year. So months of inventory, 1.2, tightest inventory situation in Canada, and it got tighter versus the previous month. When it comes to home prices in Calgary, the Canadian Real Estate Association's composite benchmark price that combines all property types into one number, $570,000, up 7% year over year, and continues to be a new all-time high for Calgary. As I said, Calgary continues to be the hottest real estate market in Canada, with really only Halifax and quietly Saskatoon nipping at its heels. One thing I saw recently was that the average home price in Calgary was down. So thus, for sure, the Calgary real estate market's seeing a decline in prices. The market's just about to crash. Well, a lot of people that have quoted that also didn't mention that median went up and the composite benchmark price went up. Why did the average price go down in such a hot real estate market? Well, the answer comes down to condos, and more condos. There was a massive surge in condo sales this past month, and this has been true for a while now, but it really jumped up this past month. And of course, condo prices have a lower price than single family homes, and that skews average price down. That's the reason why I don't use average prices, because composition of sales, or if you have a small sample size, we're gonna talk about that when we get to Halifax, that can skew the data and throw things off and kind of lead you to believe something's happening when it's really not. There's also a massive amount of money coming from Toronto and Vancouver buying those condos right now. They're looking for investment properties, and that's what the big push is on right now. Calgary is the new real estate gold rush in Canada, and until that demand dries up or we see a lot of supply come on, we're probably not going to see a significant reversal in this hot real estate market in Calgary anytime soon. But with that being said, remember, Calgary's still a prairie city. And across the prairies, when the weather cools off, so does the real estate market. So don't be surprised if we see things cool off as the weather cools off as well. The 2,250 homes sold in Edmonton last month is up 25% over the 5-year average, usually less than 1,800 homes sell in the month. But the 3,300 homes newly listed for sale in Edmonton, well, that's up 7% from that 5-year average, where usually about 3,100 homes are put up for sale in the month. When it comes to homes for sale in Edmonton right now, there's about 6,800 homes currently for sale, down 17% from the 5-year average. Usually about 8,200 homes are for sale this time of year. Months of inventory sits right at 3 right now. That's right on the edge between a seller's and a balanced market. When it comes to home prices in Edmonton, the Canadian Real Estate Association's composite benchmark price, and combining all property types into one, $380,000, down 6% year over year, down 6% from the peak, which was a year ago, but $410,000. And month over month, it was just a very slight dip. Okay, so let's talk about price a little bit more here, because we saw sales are up, inventory's down, and yes, new listings is a little bit higher, but still a lot of competition in Edmonton. Why month over month did home prices decline? And the simple answer is there is an element of seasonality here. There's a whole bunch of things going on, but seasonality is a major one. In the back half of summer and into the cooler months in the fall, it's very common that you see home prices in Edmonton, even in times when prices have been increasing, that you see prices dip a little bit in the cooler months. So if you're looking for a deal on a house in Edmonton, generally when it comes to seasonal trends, the cooler months is when you see those deals happen. Just like even when times when home prices in Edmonton have been declining, the spring often sees a little jump in prices. The Regina real estate market was unusually busy this past month. 360 homes sold in a month, up 20% versus the 5-year average of 300. And the 455 homes newly listed for sale in the month, well, that's down 5% versus the 5-year average of 480. The lack of homes for sale in Regina continues to be a problem. The 919 homes currently for sale is down 30% from the 5-year average. Usually about 1,350 homes are for sale this time of year. It's also down 19% from last year, where we had a real tight inventory situation. So months of inventory in Regina is 2.6. When it comes to home prices in Regina, the Canadian Real Estate Association's composite benchmark price, so combining all property types together, $313,000, down 3% year over year, down 5% from the peak we saw last year, $330,000. And it is also down very slightly month over month. So as I said, August ended up being sneaky busy in the Regina real estate market. 350 homes sold is really rare. In fact, it's so rare, it's a record. I went back through the records and couldn't find an August with 350 sales in it. So we saw record sales, and yet month over month, home prices decline. What is going on in the Regina real estate market? Why are prices declining? Well, there's an element of seasonality for sure in this. There's a whole bunch of other things going on. Seasonality plays into whether the market is a trend up or a trend down. Even in years when we've seen an overall trend, prices down, the spring we've seen prices come up. And even in years where we've seen an overall trend, prices up, like the last couple of years, as we get into the back parts of the year, prices generally tend to cool off a little bit, as does market activity. And speaking of market activity, we're still seeing multiple offers on good homes, but instead of 5 or 6 offers on houses, now it's 2 or 3. So definitely market activity has slowed down, but by no means is it a buyer's market or even a balanced market, depending what price point you're looking at. It could be still very much a hot seller's market. The 530 homes sold in Saskatoon last month, up 29% from the 5-year average. Usually just over 400 homes are sold in the month. While the 660 homes put up for sale in the month, that's down 10% from the 5-year average. Usually about 730 homes are put up for sale in the month. And it's the less than 1,000 homes for sale in Saskatoon that continues to cause problems for buyers. That's down 48% from the 5-year average. Normally about 1,600 homes are for sale right now. So months of inventory in Saskatoon, 1.9, putting it second only to Calgary as the tightest inventory situation in Canada. When it comes to home prices in Saskatoon, the Canadian Real Estate Association's composite benchmark price, so all property types combined into one number, $378,000, up 3% year over year, but it did just slightly drop month over month, making it down 1% from last month's all-time high. So like Regina, Saskatoon had a sneaky busy month. That 500 sales was really busy, and yet month over month, home prices dropped. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, does it? There's an element of seasonality here that has to be accounted for. Even in months or years, I should say, when we've seen home prices in Saskatoon increasing or decreasing, you see seasonality. The spring prices come up, the back half of the summer and in the winter, prices generally trend down a little bit. But we're still seeing busy market. Single family homes, $300,000 to $500,000 is where we continue to see the most competition in the Saskatoon real estate market. Again, similar to Regina, instead of seeing 5 or 6 offers on properties, it's now 2 or 3, but they're still seeing multiple offers on well-priced properties that show well. In Winnipeg, the 1,400 homes sold in a month is down 17% from the 5-year average of just under 1,700. While the 2,150 homes newly listed for sale in a month is down 5% from their 5-year average, usually closer to 2,300 homes are listed for sale in the month. And the 4,200 homes currently for sale in Winnipeg exactly equals the 5-year average. So that stronger month of sales in Winnipeg means months of inventory is at 3.0, right down the middle between a seller's and a balanced market. When it comes to home prices in Winnipeg, the Canadian Real Estate Association's composite benchmark price, $346,000, exactly equal year over year, down 6% from the peak we saw last year, about $370,000. and the prices did drop slightly month over month. You'll hear me say it time and time again, 1 month doesn't make a trend, but there was kind of a trend breaker. Sales increased in Winnipeg July to August, when generally we see a noticeable downturn in sales. Why did that happen? Local agents are telling me that because we saw more inventory come on the market, buyers have been struggling to find what they're looking for, were able to actually find something and complete that purchase. So that's part of what drove up sales. Like I said, 1 month doesn't make a trend, but it's noticeable when it breaks a trend, that's for sure. Now, just like across the prairies, it's also typical, this is the time of year that we see kind of the market start to cool down. There's been 3 months in a row that home prices in Winnipeg have decreased. It's been really minor though, about 1.5% to 2% over the course of those 3 months, so very small, and that is typical what we see. This time of year, Winnipeg prices do generally cool off as the weather cools off. In Toronto, almost 5,300 homes sold in a month. That is down 33% from the 5-year average, but it is notable for one reason, and that is that sales increase from July and August when typically they decrease. And the 12,300 homes newly listed for sale in Toronto is down 3% from the 5-year average. 12,700 is what they typically see. Now, generally in August, is when we see inventory start increasing. We actually saw it decrease. Now, I don't think this is going to continue because we've seen, as I'm reading the weekly posts from different agents in Toronto, inventory is really starting to stack up, mainly in the condo segment. So I don't think when we get the September numbers, that trend is going to continue. The 15,500 homes actively for sale right now in Toronto is down 1% from the 15,600 homes that are typically for sale. That means months of inventory is 2.9 in Toronto, so right on that line between a seller's market and a balanced market. When it comes to home prices in Toronto, the Canadian Real Estate Association's composite benchmark price, $1.14 million. That's up 3% year over year, but it's down 15% from the peak we saw in March of 22, when it was $1.33 million. It's time to bring back some old charts. Month over month price changes here. It's been 2 months in a row now we've seen home prices in Toronto drop. The first month, 0.9%. The second month, 1.7%. At 1.7% is a pretty significant month over month price decline. But for some additional context, in 2017, prices dropped 0.7% in the exact same months. They also dropped 0.5% in 2018. And last year, in the same months, prices dropped 2.5%. So it does happen. Now, is this just seasonality? No, it's not. There's obviously more play here than just seasonality, but seasonality does play into this. We are seeing a noticeable shift away from single family and semi-detached homes, and that's primarily driven by affordability. With the rise of interest rates, people simply can't afford to buy those single family homes. Those sales drops 12% single family, 14% drop in semi-detached. Apartment condo sales though are up 16%, again, driven primarily by affordability. And that is also what is skewing average price to some degree. So when you just look at average price, that huge jump in apartment condo sales is going to skew average price down. And that's why I use the Canadian Real Estate Association's composite benchmark price instead of average price. As I've been saying for a couple of months now, September and October, that's generally when you see an uptick in activity, uptick in sales. So we're gonna have to wait and see what happens. That's usually what happens after the long weekend in September. We'll wait till those numbers come in to give an idea. If we see that jump, that's an indication of the seasonality impact on the Toronto real estate market. If we don't see that jump, that's going to give us far more information as to where this market in Toronto is headed. Now, if you start looking at the weekly inventory numbers that some Toronto real estate agents have been posting, you're going to see there's been a huge spike in inventory through September here. So when we get the final September numbers back, I'm expecting there's going to be a big jump in active inventory. And a huge part of that's been driven by apartment style condos. It was expected going into this year, there'd be about 30,000 pre-construction units that would be ready for occupancy. A lot of inventory that was being built ready to go. And when it comes to pre-construction in Toronto, there's a lot of investors that would buy these units. They had no intention of ever actually occupying these units. The whole hope was that they would sell these contracts to somebody else at a later date for more money than they paid. We've obviously seen home prices decline in Toronto, so a lot of these investors are all of a sudden now losing money, or in some cases, because interest rates have gone up, they can't qualify for the mortgage that they really never intended to get anyways, because they weren't going to occupy these or get a mortgage, but now they're trapped. They can't get these things sold. They can't qualify for the mortgage. We're seeing lots of inventory peaking back up in the rental market as well. and that's the negatives of pre-construction. I have people call me on a regular basis asking what my thoughts are on pre-construction. And I give them the same answer. Do you like gambling with hundreds of thousands, if not potentially millions of dollars? I sure don't. If you don't want to gamble, don't get involved in pre-construction, because that's what it is. It's a gamble. I know for many, many years, people have considered it a sure bet. Well, now some people are finding out the hard way, it's definitely not. In Ottawa, they saw almost 1,200 sales in the month. That's down 26% from the 5-year average. And only about 1,600 homes are sold in the month. And the just over 2,200 homes newly listed for sale in Ottawa is up 3% from their 5-year average, which is a little under 2,200 homes. When it comes to active inventory, there's about 3,400 homes currently for sale in Ottawa. That's up 2% from the 5-year average. Usually there's about 3,000 homes for sale this time of year. So months of inventory in Ottawa, 2.8, meaning we're just about on the edge of a balanced market. When it comes to home prices in Ottawa, the Canadian Real Estate Association's composite benchmark price, $650,000, essentially equal to what it was last year, down 11% from the peaks we saw in March of last year when it was $725,000. So what are agents saying about the Ottawa real estate market? Well, they're telling me we're seeing a slowdown in terms of sales, obviously, are down, but also how many phone calls they're getting, how many showing requests, how many people are coming to open houses. All of that is slowing down. Now, every Canadian real estate market has seasonality, generally an uptick in the spring, flatter summer, a little bit of an uptick in the fall, and then it falls off as we get into the cooler months. Ottawa, that's a little less pronounced. They have that uptick in the spring, and then it's really, really flat basically for the back half of summer all the way through the fall, and then noticeable drop off once we get into November. We're seeing a little bit of that in the sales, new listings, active inventory, but the sales, that's the big one, that is down a fair bit from the 5-year average, and that's why you've seen active inventory increase. In Montreal, they had 2,750 homes sold in the month, down 22% from their 5-year average. Usually about 3,500 homes are sold in the month. The almost 4,900 homes newly listed for sale in the month, that is down 3% from their 5-year average. Usually over 5,000 homes are put up for sale in the month. When it comes to homes currently for sale in Montreal, there's about 15,000 homes for sale right now. That's down 3% from the 5-year average. Usually about 15,500 homes to be for sale, but their months of inventory is 5.5. That continues to trend closer to a buyer's market. Now, here's where things start to get really interesting. The Canadian Real Estate Association's composite benchmark price, so all property types combined into one, $521,000, up 1% year over year. It's down 5% from the peak of $550,000 we saw about a year ago, but jump in prices month over month. We've seen home prices in Montreal increase essentially all year long, except for a little blip in June. And it's been interesting. We've seen inventory adding up, but it's still below that 5-year average. Now, when I'm talking with agents, and if you're from Montreal, you already know this, in the summer, things are generally pretty quiet. Late August is when things start to pick back up and into September. And agents there are telling me that's exactly what they're seeing. They're still below kind of those normal past 5-year levels, but it's picking back up. We're gonna have to wait and see when those late numbers come in from the end of September, if this trend continues or not. Agents are also telling me when it comes to home prices, anything above $1 million, that's been pretty quiet. Sub $700,000, that's been busier. Still below kind of those normal 5-year trend levels, but much busier. Now, when we're talking about Halifax here, I don't have a full 5-year history on Halifax, so I have to go versus last year if I don't like it. I'm almost got enough data to make a 5-year average. We're not quite there yet. They had almost 400 homes sold a month. That is down 9% from last year. There was also almost 500 homes listed for sale in the month, and that is down 16% from last year. When it comes to active inventory, so homes currently for sale, just over 800 homes currently for sale. It's up 6% from last year. Even still, months of inventory is only at 2. When it comes to home prices in Halifax, they don't have that Canadian Real Estate Association composite benchmark price, so I gotta go with average, even though I don't like it. $580,000. It is a drop from last month. And this is exactly why I don't like using average price, because it's more volatile, especially in a small sample size like Halifax, not a ton of sales. This average price is not indicative of where the Halifax real estate market is going. We're not really seeing prices decrease. So then why am I saying the average price is down, but it's not indicative of where home prices are going? Well, every week I keep track of what's going on in Halifax. Got a friends there that send me their weekly stats, and basically every single week, 50% of the homes that sell are selling over asking. That doesn't happen in a market where home prices are on a general trend down. Now, what they're also saying is 2 distinct trends have kind of started to emerge. First is they're getting a ton of foreign buyers in Halifax. Really, I think that they should ban all foreign buyers in Halifax. That'll solve their problem. Please catch my sarcasm here. The foreign buyers, They're coming from Toronto and Ontario in the bigger picture. There's a lot of people looking at Halifax and Nova Scotia because of its affordability. We've seen home prices there essentially double in about the last 5 years, and a huge push from that is from those foreign buyers from Toronto and the rest of Ontario pushing prices up. When it comes to starter home, first-time home buyers there, that $400,000 to $600,000 price point is really competitive in Halifax right now. That's where they're seeing the most multiple offers, and that's where they're seeing generally that 50% of sales going above asking price right now. And when it comes to investment properties, that's the slow spot in the Halifax real estate market. Even though rent has gone up quite a bit in Halifax, with higher interest rates, a lot of these investment properties don't really make as much sense cash flow wise, and those types of properties are selling much slower. Well, you've made it this far in the video, so you love learning about Canadian real estate, so why don't you check out my weekly news recap here. We'll go through the most recent news articles, give you my thoughts and opinions on them so you can keep up to date. As always though, please, if you love this video, give this video a like, subscribe to Bald Prairie Real Estate if you haven't already, leave me comments below so we can chat in the comment section, and thanks very much for watching.